So before getting to the main points about this video, just a little disclaimer. I do not believe this is actually the most important news story going on right now. There are more important things going on in the world. There's the two very devastating and brutal wars in Tigray, in Ethiopia, and in Yemen. Those are ongoing humanitarian crises. There's the 10th anniversary of the war in Syria. There's a lot of talking points around that. I might make a video on that. I don't know yet. Time dependent. There's a genocide of the Uyghurs in China. There is the crisis in Myanmar. There is a lot going on. There's a big new assessment now on our security situation and our role in the world, ordered by Boris Johnson. So there is a lot of things going on that arguably transcend this as a news story, but I still think it is a little bit more than just tabloid fodder. I do think there is potential implications on the image of the monarchy and even the place of the monarchy. As bear in mind, we're probably now in the last years of this monarch's reign, and so when Charles becomes king, and the speculation that he might actually rule as King George VII rather than take the regal name Charles, but regardless, he will have a lot on his back. He will be the first monarch, really, of the modern era. I mean, Queen Elizabeth II was a monarch of the modern era in a sense, post World War II. But Charles is the first monarch of the internet era, put it that way, of the digital era. So, in this country, so his place in history will be quite unique in that sense. Um, and I think there will be a lot of pressure for him to modernize and to make this institution still relevant. And that is actually going to be quite a challenge because I don't think he will have the sort of support that his mother has had. Um, you know, I think that will be interesting to see what develops. But about the interview, the more I think about it, the more I think it's a very sad affair because what you have here is a couple who, for all the reasons they stated, decided to leave this institution. But of course, it's not just an institution, it's a family, ultimately. They might be the most famous family in the world, but they are ultimately a family. And like every family, they'll have their differences, they will have their tensions. So, for Harry especially to air grievances in front of the world like this, I take quite a dim view of that. And I've even hardened slightly from the beginning. I was skeptical from the beginning, but I've even hardened my stance somewhat because the more I think about it, the more tacky I think it is. I think it was Joanna Lumley said that when you air family grievances that way, no one wins. No one wins because, one side is going to be defensive, the other side is going to be playing the victim, as the Sussexes clearly have. And I just think it's a sad situation. Now, I know he said that he's tried to reach out to his father and supposedly calls weren't returned, but apparently Charles prefers letters. So could he not send a letter? Could he not find some avenue to voice his grievances other than going to a famous talk show host, and airing them in front of the world? It just seems very sensationalistic and cheap, frankly. Um, because he knows full well that his family cannot respond in the same way. He knows full well the royal family, at least certainly not at the highest level. The Queen isn't going to sit down and do a tell-all interview like that. She never has. That's just not the way things are done. And actually, it's one aspect of the royal family I respect. That they're not sensationalistic. That the Queen isn't, she doesn't allow herself to become tabloid fodder. That's something I respect. And I think Harry, in that sense, is putting his family in a very difficult position. Of course, they have to defend themselves from the claims. But, this idea that they're going to sit down and do a big tell all to counter those claims, and then it'll just become the Windsors versus the Sussexes. I think Harry knows that, and I think he's being very unfair in putting his family in that position. Everyone has family differences. It's not a case that Harry's right and they're wrong, or they're right and Harry's wrong. And I'm saying Harry because, he's been in the family forever, whereas he introduced his bride to the family. And whatever you think of Meghan Markle, she is, newer than Harry is to this institution. But, the more I think about it, they're basically trashing the reputation of the British royal family. And so, should they really keep their titles? I'm not so sure that they should. If they really want freedom from this, they can't have it both ways. They can't say, well, we want to get away from the British press, but we want all those connections. Okay, give up the titles, and then you'll still have connections. You can perhaps occasionally visit the country, perhaps, you know, get together with your family, something like that. There are members of the royal family who don't have titles. Like I mentioned, not Queen Anne, Princess Anne's children, they don't have titles. Um, there's other lesser royals don't have titles. Well, frankly, Harry and Meghan have put themselves in a position where they're demanding to be treated as HRHs and have, the title of Duke and Duchess. Yet they are putting up a lot of barriers themselves. That's how I read it. But there's another aspect of this I want to address, which is unfortunately there is a national rift. There's no getting away from it. Something like three-quarters of Britain side with the royal family and take a skeptical view of the Sussexes. There's different polls showing different things, but pretty much all of them cast quite a skeptical light on the Sussexes. Now, the American polls are different. They tend to be sympathetic to the Sussexes, although within that, it does tend to be left-wing Americans. But I'm getting tired of seeing prominent figures on the American left, Hillary Clinton, um, Don Lemon on CNN, Michelle Obama, right up to President Biden. They've all taken a position that is very obviously biased. Now, to be fair, some are saying that there was a bit more nuance to Michelle Obama's statement that she emphasized reconciliation, which fair enough if it's true. However, she also said that she was shocked but not surprised. This is what was reported by the Daily Telegraph. If that's true, that's very unfortunate because when the Obamas came to Britain, they seem to have very good rapport with the Queen and Prince Philip. So where's she getting this not surprised thing from? Could it be something to do with the fact that she was criticised for breaking protocol by putting her arm around the Queen? And maybe she's a bit resentful of that. She thinks it's a bit stuffy and formal. Well, if that's the case, and this is just my speculation, but if that's the case, it wasn't the Queen and Prince Philip who were criticising that; it was the press. So criticise the press. If that's our issue, I mean, maybe that's totally it's totally irrelevant. But shocked but not surprised. Not surprised. Well, what information does Michelle Obama have that she's not surprised by this? Um, all of this comes down to this supposed statement made about Archie. That's why I really think Harry should have quantified that. He should have given more weight to exactly what was said. But what he done was he kind of gave this, oh, well, give some of the information, but I'll cut off there. I don't want to talk about the rest of it. So why say it at all? To me, that is reckless because he must have known that would generate debate. You know, he must have known that would generate questions, and that's exactly what's happened. So now a lot of left wing woke Americans are thinking, oh, the British royal family, how dare they treat our citizen like this? And they're being racist towards her son, and it's terrible. And, they need to get with the times. Now, the British perspective is, well, actually, there's a lot of distortion going on here and a lot of manipulation. I'll be quite honest. Like quite a lot of people in this country, I do not entirely trust Meghan Markle. I think she is quite an ambitious woman, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. But I think that she never really intended to commit to the role that she was in. I believe that she was determined to have her way from the start. And she couldn't stand the fact that she was going to get all the privileges of royal life, but she just didn't really want to put in the expectations that came with it. And that is something that is not exactly admirable. Um, there's a photo that's circulating now showing her outside Buckingham Palace back in 1996 as a 15-year-old. Excuse me, what was going to sneeze there. I actually visited London for the first time the same year, and to think that that young woman in the picture would maybe be the woman who would bring down the British royal family. At least that's how some are seeing it. It's quite something. But honestly, I would just say to those Americans, it's not 1776. We have a constitutional monarchy now, and you don't know the whole story, really. Stop, especially Hillary Clinton, the sort of thing that she was coming out with, just swooping in and saying it was shocking and disgraceful. She doesn't know the whole story. So these woke Americans, frankly, I wouldn't say keep their nose out of it because I accept that it does involve them. Meghan's an American national, but they don't know the whole story. And, this has even had ripple effects. Sharon Osbourne apparently has now lost her show or her place in The View on the ground that she defended Piers Morgan. Well, what about that great American emphasis on free speech? You know, not much free speech going on there. So I don't like the way this is being kind of portrayed. I don't like the fact that these woke Americans are swooping in and assuming they know the whole story. They don't. They really don't. They can be sympathetic to Meghan regarding mental health issues and so on, which, I'm not going to dismiss because I think anyone can go through depression. So I'm not dismissing that. What I do have a problem with is people just assuming that because they've heard her side of the story, they know everything. And then they might say, oh, well, let the royals defend themselves, let them do an interview and so on. They're not going to do that because that would be sensationalistic and they've never done it. Okay, if you're expecting the Queen to sit down with Prince Philip and say, no, no, my family's not racist, it's all false, she's not going to do that. But that isn't some sort of vindication of what Meghan's saying. It's because that would be breaking convention. It would be just, lowering herself to the point of tabloid fodder. That's not what the Queen does. So I admit I've got a newfound respect for the Queen in recent weeks, and I admit the Crown has had some influence on that. There was an episode, it's in the second series with Claire Foy, where the Queen goes to Ghana and she danced with Kwame Nkrumah. Now, I thought, okay, that has to be artistic license. I looked it up, and it really happened. So, the Queen was using her feminine charm. She was still quite an attractive young woman back then. To basically win over the Ghanaians, and it seemed to work. And there was a backdrop of the Kennedys' visit and some tensions with Jackie Kennedy. Some of that may be artistic license, but it's very intriguing. And when you consider the following, this is something that can't be denied. The Queen was a young woman. She went into a job that she never wanted. She could have shunned her responsibility. She could have just behaved like her sister and been a party animal and so on. By the way, talking of party animals, for all Prince Harry's pontificating on racism and sexism, this is the guy who dressed up as a Nazi officer. And, just a little bit galling to hear him lecture others now. But, yeah, the Queen has carried out her responsibilities without complaint for the last almost 70 years. And I just think that warrants a little bit of respect. Okay, I'm not saying that she's always got it right. There's times that the Queen has got the public mood wrong, and she's frankly been out of touch. But that is an exception more than the norm. And I think that, you know, for Harry and Meghan to just come in and trash their family's reputation in this way, it's to me that's quite low. Um, and that's what Piers Morgan would say. And I think For once, he's right.